Hi everyone, welcome to today's session, which is brought to you by me, Nilanjan Dutta, a CAT 100 percentiler and one of the topmost educators on Unacademy and Unacademy Plus for the CAT and the MB exam segment. So when we talk about the quant section, one of the most important areas is arithmetic, followed by the geometry section. And the biggest worries that people have in the geometry section is that there are too many theorems to remember, which even if you study in the ultimate exam day when it comes to marking answers, they do not click. I did not remember so many theorems or formulas, or what happens is when to apply which theorem or formula, that doesn't click at the right moment, leading to difficulty in scoring in this geometry section. So if we look at your mocks in the past, if you look at your CAT attempts in the past, you have noticed that geometry has been probably one of the most challenging areas where everybody has suffered. So given that context where geometry is involved with a lot of these difficult theorems to remember, so the question is, how do you get or maximize your marks in this? And that is where today's session comes in, about unconventional approaches to scoring high in geometry. For starters, I'll give you a data point which goes like this, that to score well in geometry, you actually do not need to remember any theorem. In fact, except for maybe the easiest, which is Pythagoras theorem, which all of you know, no other theorem is required. So any other theorem, even if you don't know it, you can still attempt the question and get full marks out of it. The other thing is that geometry questions can be solved with a lot less effort, and that is if you follow what is the unconventional approaches. So talking about unconventional approaches, the next question will then come in, how? So that is exactly what we'll be discussing in today's session. That is the how part. So at the start of the session itself, I request all of you to kindly share the YouTube link, the YouTube video link with all your friends and fellow CAT and MB exam aspirants, so that more and more people can be part of this geometry of theorems, unconventional approaches initiative. This is a brief about myself, and I want to take the opportunity to inform all of you about the DILR live classes that are going on. We just got done with batch 1. Batch 2 is going to be starting shortly, and also we have currently a new DILR course that is going on, which is dedicated to games and tournaments, one of the most challenging topics in the DILR module. Given that I'm not only a CAT but a DILR 100 percentiler as well, it's very important that all of you attend each and every session as part of this all-important games and tournaments course. How do we be part of the Score Booster course? For that, you need to be part of the Unacademy Plus CAT subscription. So that is available on unacademy.com/plus. You can use the discount code NILANJAN.YT while subscribing to be a part of this course. Along with that, one of the courses that is newly started and going on is the Perfect Score Batch for CAT 2020. It just got started last weekend at the 14th of March. I'll continue all the way till the mid of November. That's an 8-month long course. So to be part of that course, you need to be subscribed for either the 12-month or the 24-month CAT subscription. The 24-month CAT subscription is now having a 75% off offer running on it, which means this is the one that most of you should be opting for. So in the process, what is happening is it's covering you not only till CAT 2020 but also the GDPI season, your admissions process, and by chance you want to retake CAT and CAT 2021, it's getting covered as well. So as you can see, it is almost half the price of the 12-month subscription, as well as 75% off is running on this. So do make sure all of you are subscribing to either the 12-month or preferably 24-month CAT subscription. Further, if you use the discount code Nilanjan.YT while subscribing, you'll get it at a further cheaper price, which means when you're subscribing, make sure you're using the code Nilanjan.YT and subscribe. So you'll get it at a further cheaper price than the prices quoted here. And that is respective of the 12-month or the 24-month subscription. The reason why this is called a perfect score batch is because you're getting to be mentored by people who've achieved the perfect score in CAT, like CAT-100 percentilers and other top educators who will help you get a perfect score. And this is a course which is governing all the three sections, VRC, DILR or QA, which means it's covering all your needs for CAT 2020 and beyond. So these are the features on Unacademy Plus. You not only get access to this perfect score batch, you also get access to all the DILR courses and basically unlimited access to all the courses by all the top educators, including not only the syllabus getting covered, but you're also getting test series and mocks and mentorship and guidance by people who've been there, done that. So do make sure the first thing you're doing this weekend is subscribing for either the 12-month or the 24-month subscription plan. Use the code Nilanjan.YT while subscribing. So this is the section in the referral code section is where you have to go and enter the code. You can either enter the code Nilanjan Dutta with no space for Nilanjan and Dutta, or you can enter the code Nilanjan.YT where everything is in capital. Even in Nilanjan Dutta, you can type everything in capital and the code will apply. You'll automatically see it says apply successfully, the price will reduce, and then you can check out. So now what we'll do is we'll get started with the geometry unconventional tips and tricks. The first thing that we talk about is replicating the figure freehand to scale. So I have a question. Let's say you have a geometry very complex problem. Okay, a complex problem is there. There's a figure given to you and there's a complex problem. In case I replicate or I draw the same figure freehand with the same measurements and angles, then will I get the same answers? So all I'm saying is there's a geometry figure given to you. It could be a triangle, it could be a quadrilateral, it could be a square, it could be any figure. All you're doing is you're drawing the same figure. The only thing is, in case the side lengths are 8 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 12 centimeters and so on, you're using a scaling factor. For example, instead of 8 centimeters, you're drawing 2 centimeters. Instead of 10 centimeters, you're drawing 2.5 centimeters. Instead of 12 centimeters, you're drawing, let's say 3 centimeters. That is a scaling ratio of 1:4. So all you're doing is you're drawing the same figure with the same scaling, just with a scaling ratio. And let's say you got your answer as, let's say 1.6 centimeters. What does it mean? It means your actual answer is, if I scale it back by 4 times, my actual answer will be 6.4 centimeters in the original figure. So if I do that approach and I mark the answer, my question is, will I always get the right answer or not? All I'm doing is the exact same figure. I'm keeping all same angles and same sides, same angle. The only thing is the side lengths are used scaling factor. It could be 1:4, it could be 1:5. However you find it convenient, use the scaling factors and you draw it. And then use the same scaling factor back to compare the values. So in geometry, you usually have questions like either side length or angle value or ratio of lengths or ratio of areas or approximate areas. Correct? These are the broad categories which kind of questions that you have as part of geometry. Now the question is, if I just simply replicate the figure without using any theorem, I simply draw the same figure of the question, and if I measure using a scale and protractor, will I get the same answer or not? Anybody? Always remember, in this approach, you will always get the exact right answer. Now the question is, some might ask, how do I measure, or how do I look at a line and say whether it is 1.6 centimeters or not? So that brings me to the next activity that you need to learn how to do. That is freehand. You should be able to draw lines of length 0.5 to 3 centimeters. That is lines of 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5 and 3 centimeters. Note, it just takes 2 weeks of practice to be able to draw accurately these 6 different types of lines. And the moment you know how to draw accurately what are the 1.5 centimeter lines, and if you look at a 1.6 centimeter line, you can easily approximate and say, okay, fine, this is slightly more than 1.5, so you can take it as 1.6 and mark. So the idea is you should be able to approximately and draw all lines of 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5 and 3 very accurately. Now one of you might ask a question that what happens in case I approximate 1.65 centimeter line as 1.6. Note, nothing will be impacted because of that. Why? Because the answers in geometry, if you look at the options in geometry, they are very different from each other. Usually what happens is the answer is 3 centimeters, they'll give you another answer which is 6 centimeters double, and an answer which is half, like 1.5 centimeters. So it will never happen that you're in a situation where you're stuck with very close options. So basically all you need to do is get the approximate answer. But yes, it should not happen that you approximate 2 centimeter line as 1.6 centimeter. That shouldn't happen. But approximating a 1.65 centimeter line as 1.6 centimeters, even if you have make that slight error, that is acceptable, because that won't change the answer very drastically. So all you need to do is how to draw 0.51, 1.52, 2.5, 3 centimeter lines very confidently, freehand, as well as angles like 15, 30, 45, 60, 90 degree angles. Note, if somebody can draw 15, 30, 45, 60, 90 degree angles freehand almost accurately, even if he has to draw a figure which is 40 degree, he can easily approximate somewhere between 30 and 45, slightly more towards 45, and draw an approximate 40 degree angle. Things will not change much even if by mistake he ends up drawing an actual 39 degree angle, because ultimately the ultimate job is to get something like ratio of lengths, ratio of areas and so on, or side lengths and so on, which will not be impacted much because of that. So all you need to be able to do is approximately replicate the figure freehand. Once you're able to do that, your job becomes so much more simpler. So this is one thing which all of you need to practice doing. I know it will take you 2 weeks to maybe be able to understand how to draw 0.51, but very easy. Once you get an idea about how to draw 0.51, 1.52, 2.53, you can replicate for any value in between. In case the values in the question are in the 10 to 15 centimeter range, all you can do is take a scaling factor of 1:5 and break all of them into values between 2 to 3 centimeters, and then that will be easy for you to draw. Just remember that when you're getting a final answer as well, you will scale back by the same scaling factor that you used for your measurement. So if you use the scaling factor of 1:5, remember to multiply back your final answer by 5 as well. Then only it will come out to be effective. The next thing that is important is the concept of knowing your sine and cos values. Especially sine is very important. Why? Because I'm sure those of you are aware of triangles, you're aware of the rule that for triangle, the sides are as follows. A by sine A is equal to B by sine B is equal to C by sine C. And this is something that holds for every triangle. So if you have the approximate value of the sines, then approximately you can get the ratio of the sides. And if you have one particular side length, you can approximately measure any other side by the approximate angles. Note, you can estimate the approximate angle through this because you already have an understanding of how to draw 15, 30, 45, 60, 90 lines. You can approximate the value of A and let's say C if you're comparing the two. And then if you know the value of C, you can get the value of A even without solving the triangle. Why? Because you can approximately get the value of sine C because you know the approximate value of C by looking at the figure, because you know how to look at an angle and say what is the approximate angle in the figure. And as we know, sine and cos, these values are a must to remember. Now, someone asked me, what if the actual angle is around 25 degrees, which is neither none of 15, 30, 45, 60 or 90. So you've got to remember one thing in mind, that sine 25 is going to lie somewhere between 15 and 30. So if you have this interval breakup of 15 degrees each, then automatically you can approximate for any value. And that is where things will become easy. The moment you know 15 and 30 values, you can approximate it for sine 25 as well. For example, if the sine 50, if you know the value of sine 45 and sine 60, you can approximate it again. For example, sine 45 is 1 by root 2, that is 0.717. Sine 60 is root 3 by 2, which is 0.866, which means the value will lie around the 0.8 mark for sine 50. 0.75, 0.8 mark for sine 50. So that is how you can approximate values and proceed. Remember, at the end of the day, you just need approximate values. And this is how every question on triangles can be solved. So remembering the sine and cos values. Now, do not just remember 30, 40, 60, 90, which is the common ones. Remember an extra value, that is 15. Why? Because in that case, it'll give you an understanding of how the sine or cos moves in the lower ranges. Between 0 and 30, there's a lot of gap. So knowing 15 would help you know the difference as to how it moves in the initial gap. For example, sine 30 is half, sine 0 is 0. How it moves in the in between gap, you'll get an idea if you know the value of sine 15. So always pay attention to knowing the value of the sine and cos of all the angles. The next thing that comes up is looking at the figure and estimating the approximate value. So let us look at an example figure. So let's say there's a rectangle where you have, let's say this side is length 6 centimeters, this side is length 4 centimeters. And you have a circle like this. Okay. So approximately this will be 4 centimeters, where the diameter is 4 centimeters. Now if you are trying to fit in a circle somewhere here, automatically what happens is the diameter would be approximately something like this. And given that this is 4 centimeters, you can approximately get a value of this diameter. And from the diameter, you can approximately get the value of the radius of the circle. So what you can do then is look at the options and figure out what could be the possible values of the radius. So usually what happens is, in case the radius is 1.4 centimeters, they'll give you options like 2.8 centimeters just because they wanted to get confused between radius and diameter. So in such cases, all one needs to do is look at the figure. They can in any way see that this is 6 centimeters, this is 4, so the diameter is within 2.5 max, which means the radius has to be around the 1 mark. So automatically somebody can eliminate options in the range of 2.8 centimeters and so on, which have been intentionally planted so that somebody makes an error of just calculating the diameter and jumping the gun. In fact, that is the reason why in geometry you'll find a lot of options which are double of each other or half of the right answer, and that is where drawing the approximate figure can be enough to approximate the answer and mark one of them. The moment I say this, some of you will be asking me questions like, what if options in a question are very close? So let's take a question where the options are 21 centimeters, 22 centimeters, 23 centimeters and 24 centimeters. In any such question, it would be very difficult to approximate the answer. So what do you do if the examiner is wise enough to put options like this? Can anybody tell me what we can do in such cases? If the examiner tries to be extra smart and puts in options like this, then what can you do? It's a very simple thing you need to do. If you remember, all the theorems in geometry are basically something like involve rules of multiplying numbers and dividing numbers. Be it the rule of similarity, like A by sine equal to B by sine equal to C by sine C. Be it the rule of A by B is equal to C by D is equal to E by F and so on. All of them are basically multiplication based formulas. So for example, to calculate the value of C, all you need to do is multiply E by F into D and so on. Similarly, if you look at those examples like this, it says PA into QA is equal to RA into SA and so on, which again means that it's all going to be a game of multiplying and dividing numbers. So in such cases, all you need to do is apply your prime factor logic check. So what is meant by prime factor logic check? When we say prime factor logic check, you got to look at multiples. So let's say you need to find out the value of PA, and let's say the value of SA is a multiple of a prime number, that is 11. It could be 44, it could be 66, it could be any multiple of 11. Then the moment I multiply SA with RA and divided by QA, I'll end up with PA also being a multiple of that prime factor. Similarly here, let's say D is a multiple of 19 and I multiply by E by F, I'll end up getting C also as a multiple of 19. Even if E is a multiple of 17, I'll end up getting C as a multiple of 17 and so on, which basically means all you have to do is check for prime factors in the question. Not only will prime factors in the question lead you to the answer, but there's another way to look at it is, in case that prime factor does not exist in the question, you can never get that answer. Remember, prime factors can never be created nor be destroyed. So only if the prime factor is there in the question, it will come in the answer. In case the prime factor is not there in the question, it can never come up in the answer. So now let's look at one such example. 21 centimeters, 22, 23 and 24. And let's take this case where you can see that in the question the values are a multiple of 11. So in such cases, which option do you mark? 21 is a multiple of 7, so if there's no multiple of 7 in the question, you can never get that as the answer. If there's no multiple of 23 in the question, which is again a prime factor, you can never get 23 as the answer. Out of 22 and 24, 22 is a multiple of 11, which means the answer will be option B, 22. So in such cases, somebody doesn't even need to solve it. The moment he sees it's the multiple of 11 in the question, he can mark the answer as 22 centimeters and leave. And that is why examiners avoid giving closed options. If somebody just does a prime factor check logic, he'll get the answer and leave. So the moment I talk about these prime factor logics, some people ask what if the options were 11, 22, 33 and 44. In such cases, look back at rule 4. Look at the figure approximate value. So you might be getting an approximate value in the range of 20 to 25 centimeters. But you do not know the exact value. Simply look at the options and you know the right answer has to be 20 centimeters. That's the only option in near about the 20-25 range. So again, it's all about approximate value checking with options. The other thing that is important is don't waste time on things that are not necessary, like proving whether two triangles are similar, congruent or not. Why? Because that is not necessary to be proven. You can assume them to be similar if that is the only way to go ahead solving the problem. Just assume the triangle is similar and then proceed. Don't waste the extra precious 1-2 minutes in trying to prove that it's similar so that you can apply a particular theorem and get to the answer. Because ultimately what matters is the answer and not the following all the steps in getting to it. As I said, the last thing is very important. Look out for factors and look out for square root terms. Why square root terms? Because you remember, all the theorems are based on this rule of sin A, sin B, sin C and so on. And as we know, all the values of the sines are of the form root 2 and root 3. For example, sin 45 is 1 by root 2. Sin 60 is root 3 by 2 and so on, which is why these are the roots which occur easily. Any kind of weird root that is given just to keep the options closed will not suffice, because those kind of square root terms can never emerge in the question. The only case where square root terms can emerge is using the root 3, root 2, that is the sine logic or cos logic, or the other alternative is using the Pythagoras theorem logic. So that is the only probably theorem that you need to remember. The rest entire geometry can actually be solved without using much of theorems. So just focus on what is required to answer the question and get the marks, and you're done with the geometry section. So on an average, most of the geometry questions using these approaches can be solved using 30 seconds to 1 minute approach, which is where the difference between you and Unacademy plus students lie. So that is why make sure you're not delaying things further. You're being part of the Perfect Score batch for CAT 2020, which started last Sunday. We are just throwing through the basics of the first topic of the numbers module. Make sure you're not missing out any further classes. Attend every session live on unacademy.com/plus. It'll be going on all the way till the middle of November, the single course, 8-month long course. To be a part of this course, subscribe to either 12-month or the 24-month CAT subscription plan. As you can see, the CAT 24-month subscription plan is having a 75% off offer on it. So that is the one which is highly recommended for each and every one of you. Use the discount code NILANJAN.YT while subscribing to get access to the Perfect Score batch for CAT 2020. So what you can do is, the moment you subscribe, you can let us know. So this course will be covering all the 3 sections: VRC, DILR and QA. DILR specific also we have courses at the games and tournaments and so on. Any of these courses are accessible using the code NILANJAN.YT, because you get access to all the courses by all the top educators as part of the same subscription plan. But remember to use the code NILANJAN.YT while subscribing. YT stands for initials of YouTube. but just go for Nilanjan.YT, everything in capital. So this is where you go, you select a 12-month or a 24-month plan. Here in the referral code section, you enter the code. Either you can enter Nilanjan Dutta with no space between Nilanjan and Dutta in the code, or Nilanjan.YT. Click on apply, see apply successfully, the price will reduce, and you're all good to go. On that note, thank you everybody and happy learning.